Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey family, welcome back. Of course, we do all things about self-love over here at Loving Me Before I Love You. But this month, we're going to do something super special. As it is the month of May, we're doing things about motherhood. And for today's episode, we are going to talk about the journey to motherhood. This includes fertility issues. This includes miscarriages. It may also include things like losing a child. I want to discuss how do we as women overcome these struggles. But I have a special guest with me today. I have Miss Shira Renee with us, and she is going to give us her story. We're going to discuss the struggles and the triumphs of motherhood and the journey to it. Shira, welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. We're excited that you joined us. So, we're discussing motherhood and the journey to it. Can you share with us a bit about your journey to motherhood? And make sure you include all of the challenges that you may have faced along the way.
Okay. So I have 2 living children and 1 miscarriage. My first son is 14. So I was a young mother, not too young, but young for me, for my timeline. I had him at 23.
Okay.
And that was a learning experience because I was 23, young, fresh out of school, and married. So that's a whole nother situation.
I bet.
So navigating being a young mother, a young wife, and all the things, that was definitely a journey. But I definitely get why people say your oldest you kind of grow up with, because, being that young age, you kind of learn as you grow. Because the things that I did when he was small, I definitely don't do now with my youngest. So after having him, it wasn't until he was, I want to say, maybe 9. That's when I decided to have another child.
Okay.
With my second husband.
Okay.
And we got pregnant really quickly after we got married. Okay. Literally months after. And everything was going well. Pregnant, found out I was having a girl. So I was super excited about that because I always wanted a little girl. And 5 months into that pregnancy, I just woke up one day and just started having a reaction. Like, everything was going in my body as far as like, well, I don't know if I can get vulgar or whatever, but I just woke up one day and it was just like a mess in the bed. And I knew that it wasn't, something that I did. So I ran to the bathroom and I didn't like what I saw. We immediately went to the hospital and the doctor had told us there was membrane everywhere. And the worst part about it was 2 days prior, we had a doctor's appointment. And when you're pregnant, you have different types of doctor's appointments for different things. So in this doctor's appointment, it was just like a checkup. And the checkup was you hear the baby's heartbeat. And then they make sure you're good, ask you if there's any complications or anything like that. And it was no complications. Heartbeat was strong. Felt the baby moving and everything. So what happened and transpired from a Monday to a Wednesday, I have no idea. But literally that day after that, they said they couldn't find a heartbeat. There was just membrane everywhere, and I had to deliver the baby, and everything was like a blur after that. So I literally had to go into a delivery and deliver my baby. She was 1 pound. And then they asked you, do you want to see the baby or anything like that? But at that time, I couldn't do it. Like, I was not prepared to mentally do that at all. And that was like the worst feeling ever.
I can only
having that
imagine.
experience. Yeah, having that experience, and then looking on the side of you to see, you know, how they have the preparation for the baby, like with the
blankets
dressing and the blanket.
Yeah,
to know that your baby's in there but not there. It was like the worst. So then we have to go through cremation and all of that. It was just an experience. So dealing with that kind of put me into a dark space.
Right.
Not gonna lie, that actually was the catalyst to the marriage ending for me and my husband, because we were in 2 different spaces after that. And you never really kind of get over something like that, you know? So I just felt like I felt sad.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bunch of emotions all in one, because you feel sad that, you know, this child is gone. You feel, well, for me, I just felt like I blame myself. Like, did I do something? Did I lay a certain way? You know, what caused it? Was it me? Then I blamed him, you know, oh, maybe if we would have did this or would have did that, or maybe if you would have, you know, let me sleep or whatever. Like, it was just a whole bunch of emotions just going into that. So after losing the baby, literally, I had to go to work 3 days after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had to go back to work after that, because your body, well, they assume that your body just goes right back to normal. You know, it wasn't like a baby's here, so you have maternity leave or anything like that. You have to kind of, you know, get right back into it. So I kind of numbed that feeling, if I'm honest, and just kind of went in autopilot, just, you know, went to work as usual. But seeing people, because usually when you're pregnant, somebody that you know or
is
on your timeline
pregnant.
is also pregnant, right? So it didn't hit me until I saw somebody else being posting pictures or whatever.
Who was pregnant around the same time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it would have been your same space of
and then
how old your child would have been and all of that stuff.
And then I saw like my mom, the mommy and me pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I had plans 5 months, you know, we almost to the finish line at this point,
halfway
you know,
there.
I'm picking out, okay, she's definitely going to take pictures like her mommy, and we're going to have matching outfits and all the things. So it was like everything that I said kind of manifested online. So I had to just get offline, because that was just horrible.
Yeah, protecting your peace in that point.
My mental state. So I took some time. I did, you know, I prayed a lot, and I had to really release it, you know, cry. Every day was a different emotion. Some days I was just crying. Some days I was good. Some days, you know, it would just, you couldn't really tell. Every day was different. But then that was in November. And then March, I found out I was pregnant again. So that was another ton of emotions, because now I'm nervous. And, you know, every day you're like looking around, okay, is this going to be a good day? Should I experience? What am I going to experience? How long am I going to keep it? Like, my mind is just all over the place.
Absolutely.
So I really wasn't safe mentally to like breathe until I passed that 22-week mark, because that's when I lost her. So after the 22-week mark, I was like, okay, I could calm down. My nerves is good now. You know,
I completely
everything is fine.
I completely understand.
Yeah. So he ended up coming a month early.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm experiencing an early pregnancy, because he was supposed to come in November. Ironically, the month that she passed, he was supposed to come in November. And literally the same day that I was leaving work from maternity leave, my water breaks. And he came that next day. So he's, he always has always moved to the beat of his own drum. But yeah, that was an experience too. But both of my children, the two boys, were they were C-sections.
Okay.
And then I had to physically, vaginally deliver my daughter.
So when you actually found out that you were pregnant, again, after the miscarriage, were you also like already thinking, I'm going to try again? Or were you surprised? Were you like, this was not my plan?
I was prepared to try again. My husband had wanted to try again. He wanted to try again in the attempts to get another girl. And then when he found out it was a boy, it was a whole nother, situation. But yeah, the plan was to try again. I didn't think it was going to happen that quickly. But it did happen that quickly. I was giving it maybe within that 6-month mark, but he came like literally 3 months after that. So that in itself was an experience to go from being pregnant to having a miscarriage to your body dealing with a miscarriage to now your body having to prep to be pregnant again.
Right.
Like that physically was already a experience, and then now mentally. Yeah, it's like
it's a whirlwind.
Yes, exactly.
I can recall, I've had miscarriages myself, so I can actually recall, I have 2 children as well, but I've had 4 miscarriages. It was like I had 2 before each child, right?
Wow.
So I had miscarriages first, and then I had my son, and my son was actually born prematurely. He's 15 now, but he was born at 26 weeks and 4 days. So for him to have survived that was a struggle. But even, having 2 miscarriages after he was born to then having my daughter, I can remember the struggle being, when do I tell people?
Yes.
Because the very first time I was pregnant, it was like, oh my God, we're pregnant.
Yeah.
Like we was immediately telling everybody.
Yes.
And everybody's getting excited. Then it's like, oh, we had a miscarriage. And having to have that conversation was, I think, the hardest. And back then, I wasn't really like expressive of my true emotions to people. I would always be like, oh, I'm fine, but deep down was like miserable. And wondering like, will I ever be a mom? Will it ever happen for me? And so I can definitely relate with those emotions of how I felt. Excuse me. But I also can relate to feeling hopeful that it would actually happen, right? It was like, okay, you've had these miscarriages. Then I had a son that was born prematurely, and I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is just it. He's just going to probably be an only child. But I've always had when I saw my life, I always saw my life as a parent of 2. I always saw my life as a parent of a daughter and a son.
Me too.
And so I didn't like give up the hope for it to happen, but your mind plays tricks on you a lot. And it's like, I know this is what I really dream and this is what I really hope for. But on the other side is like, I don't know if I can do that again. I don't know if I can do that. And when I had gone through the 4th one, I was like, oh, I'm done.
Right.
And then my spirit always said, you had 2 before him. Maybe it's, maybe it's coming. Like maybe it's coming. And I'll never forget the day that I conceived her. Like I knew it. It was like, I knew it in that moment. And I was like, oh, it's going to be a good Christmas. And then, we found out literally at Christmas, like it was that Christmas time that it took place. And it was like, oh, then I was like, it's got to be a girl because this is the last time. Like, this is it. Right. And I still had struggles even with her pregnancy. I didn't want to tell nobody. We waited till it was like 14, 15 weeks. Like we was in 2nd trimester for sure before saying, that we were pregnant. So I definitely can relate. But I always think that, when we struggle with these things, it's the hope portion that I feel like always get diminished
Yeah.
on the journey, right? And it's like it's like you don't know what to say to a woman who's going through these things, even though you've gone through them. Sometimes it's like, yes, I've gone through them, but then I got kids, and so
Right.
you almost feel guilty when you're talking to someone who hasn't had that opportunity.
Yeah. Because every situation is different.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And you want to be a glimmer of hope for them, to say, oh, I had this happen to me, but I was able to still, conceive and have a healthy baby from it. But then sometimes it's like, but you don't know if that's their story. You don't know if that's what God has for them.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that our life is not our own, right? And the things that
Mm-hmm.
we go through are literally for other people, to have hope and experience things, like to know that they can make it and be successful, or, just kind of like get through the valley.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always that other side of me that says, yes, I can help them through this, like, miscarriage experience of understanding what that feels like. But on the other
Mm-hmm.
side of that, like, I don't know if I can help them with what if they just simply don't ever have the opportunity to be a mom.
Right.
Have you ever had to have a conversation with anyone, like, about your journey and that they were experiencing like the same thing?
Yes. A friend of mine, she actually had a miscarriage. She had two as well. And it was kind of like what you were saying, like they can take what you're saying and appreciate that you kind of similarly understand, because you've had a miscarriage, but you don't understand to the extent to what they're going through, because like you said, you still have children. So at the same time, they're like, okay, well, you've had one and then you went through it. So it's different. I am going through it and I don't have any to show for it. So it's like they take it, but then at the same time, they're like, okay, well, not really. And for me, I forgot to add, when I had my oldest son, I got pregnant again when he was about 3 or 4. And I ended up having a miscarriage. I mean, not a miscarriage. I ended up getting an abortion because his dad and I weren't in a good space, right? So that was the reasoning that they said my miscarriage happened because of that abortion. So to me, I feel like the doctors sometimes, they ask you those questions. So when they don't know what the real reason is, they can point it to something else. Because if that be the case, when I was pregnant with my daughter, you asked those questions beforehand. So you could have said, okay, well, because you've had an abortion, let's make sure we really take the time to watch your cervix. But you didn't do that. You just let me go as normal. And then when a miscarriage happened, then you blame it on, well, your cervix was incompetent because you've had said
Complicated
abortion.
cervix.
Right. Yes. So now with that, going into my son, when I had him, oh, you've
They were
had a
watching it.
miscarriage. Now we're going to watch your cervix. So now you have to get this procedure, which is a cerclage.
Cerclage.
Yes, to get him to stay in. So even with the cerclage, you can still have the possibility of a miscarriage or him coming early, which he did come early. So it's like all of these things, and you don't think about that when you're having kids or you're in the moment. Like, this abortion could make something happen later on, or whatever the case may be. You don't think about that. Or having this child will affect me later on, because the back pain after having a child and epidural, we don't talk about that either.
Oh man. Oh man.
So it's like, yeah, it's just so much that we go through as women, and have these babies. Just, some people have the babies, they come into the hospitals pregnant with the baby, and then one of them or none of them leave. We don't, prepare for that either. So it's just a blessing to, have the experience and a story to tell and still be here, to tell the story.
That is so true. Did you have a support system? And if you did, how did they help you navigate these highs and lows?
I didn't. And that was one of the reasons why we had issues in our marriage, because I didn't feel supported in that way. We both kind of took the news and handled it individually. And we never collectively came together. And when it was time for him, or when he decided to try to support, for me, the moment passed. So I didn't receive the support in that space, because when I needed it, it wasn't available. So I navigated it by myself, through it by myself. So now I'm going to heal by myself. My mom was there, on the back end, as far as like phone calls and stuff. But in those type of spaces, you want people to show up for you.
Absolutely.
And nobody really showed up. They virtually showed up, texts and phone calls, but to physically show up, no, nobody was there. I had to navigate that through by myself, just me and Jesus.
Did it affect you from because we're a self-love show in general. How did it affect you personally, like your own levels of self-esteem or feelings of self-worth and things of that nature? How did that affect you?
Well, I always struggled with self-worth growing up. When you're the chunky friend, you're not the one that gets looked at, right?
Man,
you're not the one. So I always dealt with that. But then when I got married, I was like, okay,
right.
Relationships for me gave me confidence. And after that, I really had to navigate learning how to be confident within myself. So that for me actually helped me gain the confidence for myself, because I use my daughter. Okay, would you want your daughter to be dealing with this? Would you want your daughter to be, dealing with a man like this, or
she became your motivation?
This type of treatment? Yes. So she became my motivation in everything that I do, regardless of her not being here in the flesh. She's definitely here when she is, definitely.
Awesome. I think a lot of times we don't look at how we see ourselves in our struggles actually contribute to our outcomes, actually contribute to, how we move forward. A lot of times everything is just so outward, we're just looking at everything from an outward spectrum, like who's not here, who didn't help me, who actually showed up,
right.
and we contribute or move on to other people. I was able to move on because she was here every day, sitting beside me, having a conversation, encouraging me to do X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, if you didn't do what you needed to do for you, you couldn't. I mean, the person can sit there and talk all day. Right. You're the one responsible for making the move. And so being able to build that self-worth and self-confidence through even the struggles, even the valleys that we experience, I think having that wherewithal to say, you know what, no, you did it.
Yeah.
Encouraging yourself, you did it. And even though you don't like the outcome sometimes, you made it through. Right. You're not still there. What would you say to women who are currently struggling with fertility issues, or maybe feeling discouraged, may have just gone through a miscarriage last week? Like, what would you tell them to encourage them?
I would say you never get over it, but you do learn how to navigate to move forward. take your moment to do whatever it is that you have to do, whether that's cry, scream, yell. Have your moment because you deserve to have your moment. But understand that everything happens for a reason, and there is definitely a lesson in what you're going through, and it'll get greater later. It definitely will. It definitely will. God will use it for an amazing testimony, whether it's to encourage someone else that's been through a miscarriage, or to prepare you for another child that you will naturally have, or just to alter your mindset. And maybe you were too dependent on that man, or you were too dependent on yourself to say you can have a baby. Maybe God wants to get your attention for you to now rely on him and trust him in the process. So it's always something. It's for a reason. And for me, I knew after the fact that it was for me to trust him and not put my trust in man or my man at the time.
Mm-hmm. He does that a lot.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
God does that a lot. He always puts you in a place where you are so dependent on him because he's jealous. He don't want you, dependent on other people,
Mm-hmm.
even within a marriage, even, within
Mm-hmm.
friendships, careers, all of that. Like he wants you to solely depend on him all of the time. We do tend to lean other ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier because it's, what's in the natural, right? What do I see?
The tangible. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The tangible.
Mm-hmm. He will literally have to break your heart in order for you to properly allow him to put it together the right way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just think for women who are listening to this podcast, and as we say, love yourself before loving others, even in the darkest hours, even in the wake of wanting to be a mother and feeling like you can't, even
Mm-hmm.
when you are a mother and wanted more children,
Mm-hmm.
count on yourself to show up for you, right? Take care of yourself, eat healthy, exercise, do some journaling, do some mindset work, date yourself, get to know who you are, build yourself up. And always remember, you're a woman. You're always a mother. You're always a mother. It doesn't matter if you're mothering the neighborhood kids. It doesn't matter if you're mothering your nieces and your nephews. Doesn't matter if you're mothering godchildren.
Mm-hmm.
You are a woman. You are a mother. And I encourage you to see yourself as the things that you desire. Because as much as you want the natural, ask God if it's in his plans for you. Because our desires always should be the desires that God has for us. And he's going to give you the desires of your heart. He may not give it to you in the way that you thought it would come, but it comes, And if you are a mother that have children and just simply wanted more, he may have given you tens of more children and the friends of the children you have. Yeah. So always try to see things from a different perspective, but love yourself through it. Absolutely. It's the love that you give for yourself that you can also give to others. So I want to first say thank you for joining us. If you have, we would always invite you back. It has been a pleasure interacting with you. I know that you have your own podcast. And if you would like to tell the people what the name of your podcast is and they can come see you over there.
Sure. The name of my podcast is the Blemish Beauty Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube and Apple and Spotify.
Awesome. Thank you, Shira Renee, for joining us. I am Tammy Nicole. I am your self-love empowerment coach. Again, come back every Transformation Tuesday. and learn some more about how loving you is better than loving others. Yes, I said it, because self-love is essential, and you should love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus. I'm Coach Tammy Nicole, and I'll see you next time.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.